Chapter 49 of JinPingMei Original Version. Please bend your body to pray for glory, and encounter a monk who shows up to administer medicine. After Jia Shu returned home and replied, Jia Tixing immediately came to thank Simon King and said, "Sir, the grace of survival is not due to the great power of Yu Guang." "How great?" Simon King said with a smile, "Sir, don't worry. Assuming that you and I have never done anything, let him go as he says. I have a clear opinion." While setting a table in the hall for dinner, they talked and laughed until late at night, before saying goodbye and going home. The next day, he still joined the Yamen as a director, no problem, but when Zheng Gong, the patrol officer, saw that Ben could not go up, he knew that the two officials were taking care of him, and he was very angry. Because there were many errors in the 7 matters reported by Grandmaster Kai, all of which harmed the lower and benefited the higher, he immediately went to the capital to see the court to answer his orders and get a seal. He said, "The wealth of the world is more valuable than circulation. If you use the people's anointing to gather the capital, you may not be able to govern peacefully. The method of making money among the people Bao is not feasible. When 10 large coins are not available, the method of salt banknotes cannot be updated repeatedly. I heard that the power of the people is at stake. Who will defend the country?" Kai Jing was furious and reported to Emperor Hizong, saying that he was making unrestrained suggestions and obstructing state affairs. Duke Zheng was sent to the Ministry of Civil Affairs for inspection and was deposed as the magistrate of Qingzhou, Shaanxi Province. Song Pan, the censor of Shaanxi Province, was the brother-in-law of Kai Yu, a bachelor. Tai Shi Yin ordered Pan to impeach his private affairs, arrest his family members, train him to be imprisoned, remove Xiaozu, and flee to Lingbiao to avenge him. This is a posthumous matter and is not an issue. Besides, Simon King was at home. At the same time, he sent Han Daoguo and Qiao Dagu's nephew Chui Ben to take the cash and go to Gaoyang Guanhubu to register with Mr. Han. He stayed to ensure that the family ordered fruits, prepared a large banquet, and asked about the arrival of Kai Yushi ship. One day, Lai Bo inquired and learned that he and the patrolling Song Yeshi boat got up from the capital and went to Dongchang Prefecture to have people come to his home to report. Here Simon King and Jia Tixing got up. Lai Bo met Kai Yeshi on the boat from Dongchang Mansion and sent him off. Then, Simon King and Jia Tixing went 50 miles out of the suburbs to welcome them to Shinhaku, the place named Beijia Village. I first went to Kai Yushi's boat to pay homage to him and prepared to invite Song Ong. Kai Yushi said, "I know, I will definitely go to the house with him." At that time, the magistrate who in Dongbing, as well as the subordinate prefectures and counties, had military and health officials, and monks, all of whom were waiting to welcome him. Zhou Xiaobai, Jingdu supervisor, and Zhang Tuanlian of the Marshal Mansion all led their men and horses to follow them. They preached on clear feet, and all the chickens and dogs disappeared. He advocated and welcomed Song Shunjian into the Procuratorate of Dongbing Prefecture. Officials from all over the place met, submitted documents, and rested for the night. The next day, the doorman came to report, "Master Kai, who patrols the salt, has come to pay his respects." The censor of the Song dynasty rushed out to greet him. After reciting the etiquette, the guests and hosts sat down. After the tea presentation, the Song Yeshi asked, "When will Brother Nyan leave?" Kai Yeshi said, "The student will stay for a day or two, because the report said, there is an acquaintance of Simon Qianbing in King County. He is from a wealthy family in this area. He is a prudent man, rich and polite. He is also a disciple of Mr. Kai. He has an acquaintance with the student. I was contacted by him from a distance, and the student was about to come to him. I will bow to him in my house." Song Yeshi asked, "Is that Simon Qianbing?" Kai Yeshi said, "Now he sees that he is punishing thousands of households in this department, and he met the New Year brother yesterday." The Song Yeshi ordered his left and right hands to look at it. And when he saw the names of Simon King and Jia Tixing, he said, "Is this someone related to Zai Yunfeng?" Kai Yeshi said, "That's him. Now I see him waiting outside, and I want the students of the Central Committee to accompany him. Brother, come to his house for a meal." "What do you think, brother?" the Song Yeshi said. I'm afraid it's hard for students to get there when they first arrive here. Kaiyoshi said, Brother Nyan, what are you afraid of? Since we are on the same level as Yunfeng, what's the harm in you and I walking away? So he ordered to look at the sedan chair and set off together, passing the news on the way. When Simon King heard the news, he, Lai Bao and Ben rushed home on fast horses to prepare a banquet. A Jiaoshan colorful shed was set up at the front of the door, and musicians from the two courtyards played music called high-end opera and acrobatics. It turned out that the Song Dynasty Yeshi had ordered all the servants to disperse and only followed a few blue banner Qingdao officials. He and Kaiyoshi sat in two large sedans and carried double umbrellas and went to Simon King's house together. At that time, Dongbing Prefecture and King County were in commotion. They all said, a high-ranking official from Ximen who was recognized by the inspector came to his house to have a drink. In panic, Zhou Xiaobai, Jingdu supervisor, and Zhang Tuanlian each led their own sentries to guard the left and right streets. Simon King, wearing green clothes and a crown, greeted him from afar. There were drums and music on both sides, and we got off the sedan at the front of the gate and went in. Both Song Yeshi and Kaiyoshi were wearing bright red ZZ embroidered clothes, black gauze soap shoes, and a red ribbon on the top of the crane. They were holding two large fans. I saw 5 halls with high rolls of xiang curtains and rows of brocade screens. There are 2 dining tables in front, with high-top sugar cubes and dingsheng cluster plates, which are very neat. The 2 officials bowed and entered the hall to celebrate with Simon. Kaiyoshi ordered the family to furnish the family with the usual gifts, 2 ends of lake silk, a collection of essays, for bags of bud tea, and 1 end of Duangxing stone. The censor of the Song Dynasty only sent a single greeting card in Wanhong with the words Attendant Song Kiao Nyan greets. You, Simon King said to Simon King, I've heard about the reputation for a long time. This student is here for the first time, and he hasn't enjoyed himself to the fullest yet, so he shouldn't disturb him. If Brother Kai Nyan hadn't invited him to come and worship, how could he be so lucky to receive you? The panicked Simon King knelt down and worshipped, and said, My servant is a military officer who was under the command of the Imperial Guard. Today I am fortunate to be looked after by you, and I am blessed with glory. So he bowed respectfully and bowed with great humility. The censor of the Song Dynasty also returned the courtesy and recounted the etiquette. At present, Kaiyoshi asked Song Yeshi to stay on the left, while he was on the right, and Prime Minister Ximen Qingshui accompanied him. After the tea and soup were served, the flute and xiao music filled the ears at the steps, and the drums were noisy and the music started to move. Simon King handed over wine and the banquet was over, and the cutting path was presented below. There are countless delicacies, peach blossoms in the soup, and the sound of singing and dancing, and the excitement before eating. The 2 attendants on the sedan chair each received 50 bottles of wine, 500 snacks, and 100 kilograms of cooked meat. Family members, officials, disciples, etc. are managed in separate rooms, so there is no need to go into details. Simon King's banquet that day also cost him 1,000 taels of gold and silver. The Yeshi of the Song Dynasty was from Nanchang, Jiangxi Province. He was impetuous. He only sat down for a short time and got up after listening to a few words of the play. The panicked Simon King stayed again and again. Kaiyoshi said at the side, Brother Nyan has nothing to do. If you want to sit down for a while, why come back so quickly? Song Yeshi said, Brother Nyan is still sitting here, and the student wants to go to the procuratorate to deal with some official matters. Simon Qingzhao ordered his men to put the 2 table seats and gold and silverware in food boxes, totaling 20 loads, and called for servants to serve them. A large banquet from the Song Yeshi, 2 jars of wine, 2 rams, 2 envelopes of gold silk flowers, 2 horses of Duanhong, a pair of gold plates, 2 silver pots, 10 silver wine cups, and 2 silver folding bowls, a pair of tooth chopsticks. Kaioshi's is also average. They all handed over their notices. Song Yeshi repeatedly said, How dare my student take this? He looked at Kaiyoshi. Kaiyoshi said, Brother Nyan is here to govern. How can my students dare to accept it as the way of nature? Simon King said, It requires some subtle etiquette, but it's just a cup of tea. Why is it outside? When the two officials recommended it, next, the table and seats have been carried out the door. The imperial censor of the Song dynasty had no choice but to collect the invitations and thank Simon King. Saying, I came here to see Jing for the first time today. I disturbed the grand banquet and paid tribute to you. How can I be responsible? I will never forget the repayment of my appearance. Because he said to Kaiyeshi, Brother Nyan is still sitting here. And the students say goodbye, so he made a speech and stood up. Simon King wanted to send him far away, but the Song Yeshi refused. So he urgently asked him to come back, raised his hands and left in a sedan chair. When Simon King came back, he accompanied Kaiyeshi, took off his crown and belt, and asked him to sit back in the rolling booth. Because he ordered all the musicians to be sent away, only the actors remained. Simon King ordered the tables to be rearranged, and rare fruits were placed on the table for them to drink. Kaiyeshi said, Today you are sitting with my brother Song Nyan and you are arrogant. You are also talking about a grand banquet and many wine vessels. How can you be worthy of it? Simon King laughed and said, It's just a sign of fear. The name of Song Gongzu? Kaiyeshi said, The name is Song Yuan. The pine tree is the original spring. Then he said, He kept coming back for a while, but he came because he was praised by the students for his great virtues at Siquan and was acquainted with the old gentleman. He also knew that he was related to Yunfang. Simon King said, I think the Zai family must have something to say to him. I think Song Gong is a bit strange as a person. Kaiyeshi said, Although he is from Zhangxi, there is nothing strange about him. It's just our first meeting today. Why don't you show off? After saying that, he smiled. Simon King said, It's late today. The old gentleman won't go back to the boat, Kaiyeshi said. I will sail on the boat tomorrow morning. Simon King said, Please don't give up and stay overnight in the dormitory. Tomorrow the students will send farewell to the pavilion. Kaiyeshi said, I am loved by you too much, because he told his men, Go back outside the door and pick them up tomorrow morning. Everyone agreed and laughed, leaving only two family members to serve him. When Simon King saw that all his men had gone, he came down from the banquet and called Diana, whispering in his ear, like this, Go and sit in the courtyard and call them Dong Zhaoer and Han Jinchuer. They will be carried in a sedan chair at the back door. Come on, don't let anyone know. Dan agreed and went. Simon King Fu came to the banquet and drank with Kaiyeshi. The children of Haiyan were singing beside them. Simon King Yin asked, How long did it take for the old gentleman to come home? Is the old lady of your house healthy? Kaiyeshi said, My mother is well here. The student is at home. And half a year has passed without realizing it. When he comes back to see the court, he doesn't want to be Cao He Lun impeached all the 14 students of the same year who were working in the History Museum, and all of them were dismissed from the post of foreign ministers. The student then chose Sitai to patrol the two Huaiyi rivers for salt inspection. Brother Song Nyan, who was also Kai Lao, patrolled the place. Mr. S. disciple. Simon King asked, Where is Mr. N now? Kaiyeshi said, And Fengshan has been promoted to the head of the Ministry of Industry and went to Jingzhou to collect imperial wood. You should wait. Well, after finishing speaking, Simon Qingjia's disciples from Haiyan came up to pass the wine. Kaiyeshi ordered, You sing the proud fisherman and I will listen. The disciples were singing nearby when they saw Dian coming to ask Simon King to speak. Dian said, I asked Dong Jiar and Han Jinchuan to come to the back door and sit down in the mother's room. Simon King said, You'd better ask the sedan to be carried over to the side, Dian said. It's been lifted to the side. When Simon King walked to the upper room, the two singers kowtowed forward. Simon King said, I invite you to come here today and help you serve Mr. Kai at the foot of the mountain in the evening. He is now appointed as the patrol censor. Don't neglect it. Help him with your heart and I will reward you. Han Jinchuaner smiled and said, You don't need to give me instructions. I always know. Simon King Yin jokingly said, The good thing about the Southerner's business is the south wind. You have to twist your hands and feet every day. Dong Zhaoer said, Mom, listen here. Dad, you are leaning against the south wall with scallions and scallions. You are getting more and more sophisticated. The head of the royal palace kotos. Don't we want to drink the water from the well? Simon King smiled and walked forward. Come by. When they reached the head of the Yemen, they saw Lai Bo and Chen Jingji coming up with the unveiling notice. They looked at it with Simon King and said, just now Kiao's father said that while Father Kai is free this time, he will tell Father Kai about this matter. That's it. I'm afraid I'll be busy tomorrow. I taught my brother-in-law to write my two names here, Simon King said. You are following me. Lai Bao followed and stood outside the wooden shed. While Simon King was drinking, he mentioned, there is something going on here. I don't dare to commit blasphemy. Kai Yashi said, Siquin, if you have anything to do, just give me orders, and all the students will follow them. Simon King said, last year, I left my relatives to collect some grain and grass from the side, and send some salt. I was sent to Yangzhou, Guizi, to distribute salt. I hope that the people who beg will be green and green if I distribute it earlier. It is a sign of kindness. Because he handed over the unveiling note, Kai Yashi read it. It says, businessmen come to Bao and Shui Ben, and they get 30,000 citations of Hui salt from the old school. Beggars will be collected as soon as possible. Kai Yashi looked at it and said with a smile, what's the matter? At the same time, he called the guard to kneel down in front of him and ordered, kowtow to your Lord Kai. Kai Yashi said, when I arrive in Yangzhou, you come to the Chaoyuan to see me. I am here 1 month earlier than other businessmen. Simon King said, old sir, please let me go for 10 days, as early as possible. Kai Yashi kept the original note in his sleeve. While the scholar was pouring wine next to him, the disciples sang again. After singing, when it was time to light the lamp, Kai Yashi said, after a long day of disturbance, let's stop drinking. As he got up to attend, he wanted to hold the candles. Simon King said, stop holding the candles, please change the clothes behind me, sir. So we played around in the garden for a while and went to the Jade Pavilion, where a banquet was set up with low curtains and bright silver candles. The high-end actor, Simon King, has been sent away. The book boy put away the household chores in the studio and closed the corner door, only to see two singers dressed in makeup, standing at the foot of the steps, holding candles forward, as if they were kotoing for times. But see, a graceful face, gold-lined clothes, and the fragrance does not move down the stairs. Sometimes water splashes and my skirt gets wet, just like returning from a rain trip in Wushan. When Kai Yashi saw it, he was unable to advance and reluctant to retreat. Then he said, Siquin, how can you be so loving? I'm afraid you can't do it. Simon King smiled and said, how is it different from the past tour to Dongshan? Kai Yashi said, I'm afraid I'm not as talented as Shi, but you are as good as Wang Yujin. So under the moonlight, he joined hands with the two prostitutes, as if Liu Ruan had entered the rooftop. After entering the pavilion, I saw that the cultural relics were still there, and when I asked for paper and pen, I wanted to leave an inscription and give it to him. Simon King ordered the boy to quickly brush the thick ink from the Dwangxi ink stone off the brocade paper. This Kai Yashi was finally the top scholar. He picked up the pen in his hand and wrote without adding any details. His words were written like a dragon or a snake, and he wrote a poem under the light of a lamp. The poem says, I have been away from Jun's house for more than half a year, and the cultural relics in the mansion are still vague. After the rain, the book boy opens the medicine garden, and when the wind returns, the fairy walks on the flower bed. Why rush the clock when you are about to get drunk? It will remind you even more when the poem is finished. This departure adds a new sense of hopelessness, and I don't know when I will come back again. So he went outside and stood under the flowers. It was the middle of April, and the moon was just rising. Simon King said, old sir, it's still early, and Han Jinshuan, I never gave him a glass of wine. Kai Yashi said, exactly, if you call him, I'll have a drink under the flowers. So Han Jinshuan took the big golden peach cup, poured a full cup, and handed it to him with his delicate hands. Deng Zhaoer was holding the fruit by the side. Kai Yashi had eaten it, poured another cup, and rewarded Han Jinshuaner, because he said goodbye, Siquin. There is too much wine today, so let's take the high price. So he shook hands with Simon King and said, my virtuous man is so kind and virtuous, and my heart is hanging with my heart. Why are you here if you are not of the same flesh and blood as Siwen? If you make every step forward, you will never dare to live up to Shangde, Simon King said. Why did the old gentleman say this? You don't need to mind. Seeing him holding Dong Zhao's hand, Han Jinxuan knew the situation and went back. When they got to the upper room, Yunyang asked, "Why don't you sleep with him and come here?" Han Jinxuan smiled and said, "He left Dong Zhao behind. If I don't come, just do what you do there." After a long time, Simon King Yu reported the arrangement and came in, called Lai Xing'er and said, "Tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, I will send boxes of food, wine, rice and snacks for dinner." I called the kitchen servant and followed him to Yangfu Temple outside the door to see you off, Mr. Kai. The two little girls agree. Don't miss it, Lai Xing'er said. The second mother in the family is celebrating her birthday, but no one is watching. Simon King said, "Leave the chessboy to buy things and ask the cook to cook on the big stove behind." After a while, Shadong and Diane took over their homework, asked for a pot of good tea, and went to the garden to rinse their mouths with Mr. Kai. The bed in the Jade Pavilion study room is fully furnished with quilts and pillows. Kai Yeshi saw that Dong Jiar was holding a Xiang Fei bamboo mud and gold-faced fan, with an ink painting of the water of a Xianglin flat stream on it. Dong Jiar said, "Don't you dare bother me to give me a poem on it," Kai Yeshi said. "There is no question, so I just point to your name Wei Xian." So I picked up a pen under the lamp and wrote 4 sentences. The small courtyard is quiet, and the moonlight soaks in the window screen. It's not too late to meet each other by chance. The crepe myrtle man loves the crepe myrtle flower. After finishing writing, Dong Jiar quickly thanked her. The two packed up and went to bed. Shatong, Diane and his family were sleeping in the bright room. One night is not a problem. The next morning, Kai Yeshi gave Dong Jiar 1 tael of silver, wrapped it in a large red paper envelope, and went to the back to show it to Simon King. Simon King said with a smile, "If you make a living as a civil servant, he will have a lot of money for you. This is a sign of success." Because Zhao Yunyang each gave him another 5 coins, they sent them away through the back door. The bookboy scooped up the washing water and sent him to wash and dress. Simon King came out and ate porridge with him in the hall. His subordinates had already waited on the sedan and horses to pick him up, and they spoke to Simon King and thanked him again and again. Simon King said again what the student said yesterday. Whether the old gentleman goes there or the student reads here, be sure to pay attention to 1 or 2 things, which is enough to understand, Kai Yeshi said. Don't say that the virtuous man is here. Just pay a high price for a piece of paper, and all the students will follow it. After saying that, they both got on their horses and followed him from left to right. After leaving the city, we went to Yangfu Temple and borrowed the help of the elder and abbot to set up a farewell party. With wine, Lai Xing'er and the cook had already arranged the tables and seats. 2 young actors, Li Ming and Wu Hue, played and sang. After a few drinks, when he could not move from his seat, Kai Yeshi stood up, and his husband, horse, and sedan were waiting outside the 3rd door. Before leaving, Simon King talked about Mao King's case. "We are students who knew each other. Because of the mistake, we went to Yangzhou to catch him in the case of Zhang Zhang, the old Grand Patrol. This matter has been settled. If I see Song Gong, I hope you can let's just say a word and be grateful to each other." Kai Yeshi said, "It doesn't matter. I saw brother Song Nyan and said, if you are an envoy, just bring him up and let him go." Simon King bowed and thanked him again. The official heard that later Song Yeshi went to Jinan, and he met Kai Yeshi on the boat in the river. The public servant brought Mao King to Yangzhou. Kai Yeshi said, "This is in the hands of Mr. Zhang and is not involved in the case. What do you care about him?" Then he put him back. After falling down, Entong went to Dongbing Mansion, but only 2 boatmen were left. Without waiting, Entong was released. It's exactly this. Justice and human feelings are 2 things, right and wrong, and justice among people is the most difficult thing to do. If you follow justice and human feelings, you will suffer losses. If you follow human feelings, justice will suffer. On that day, Simon King was about to be sent to the ship, but Kai Yeshi refused and said, "There is no need to send Simon King far away. I just want to say goodbye." Simon King said, Wan Wei, take care, please give me my regards at a small price. After finishing speaking, Caillou stepped into the sedan chair and laughed. Simon King returned to the abbot and sat down. The elder came over and clasped his hands to ask questions, and handed tea to Simon King in return. Seeing his white eyebrows, he asked, "How old is the elder?" The elder said, "The young monk is 470. Simon King said, "I will be so healthy again." When asked about the name of the Dharma, the elder said, "The name of the young monk is Dao Jian." He asked again, "How many disciples are there?" The elder said, "There are only 2 young disciples. There are also more than 30 monks practicing in this temple." Simon King said, "This temple is also spacious, but it needs to be repaired." The elder said, "My dissatisfied father said that this temple was originally built by Zhou Shu's father. When he lived there, he had no money and food to repair it, so it was ruined." Simon King said, "It turns out that this is the incense courtyard of Master Zhou in your garrison. I saw that his home is not far from the village. No matter how important it is, you can report it to your Master Zhou and write a fate book. If you do more in other places, I will also help you." Some charity. Dao Jian quickly put his hands together and asked for thanks. Simon King told Dayaner, "Take a tael of silver to thank the elder, please excuse me today." Dao Jian said, the young monk didn't know that his father was coming, so he didn't prepare a meal for him. Simon King said, "I want to go back and change my clothes." Dao Jian quickly asked the young novice to open the door. Simon King changed his clothes when he saw that in the 5 large meditation halls behind the abbot, there were many wandering monks knocking on wooden fish and reading sutras. Simon King couldn't help but walked inside to watch. I saw a monk with strange bones and strange appearance. He had a leopard head with sunken eyes and a purple liver color. He was wearing a chicken wax hoop and a flesh-red robe, with a messy mustache under his chin and a smooth eaves on his head. He is an eccentric true arhat, a one-eyed dragon whose fire nature has not been eradicated. He sat still on the Zen bed, with his head hanging down, his neck tucked into his chest, and jade chopsticks flowing from his nostrils. Simon King said nothing and thought to himself, this monk must be a capable monk, otherwise, why would he be so different? Wait until I wake him up and ask him what he is doing. So he shouted, "That monk, where are you from? Where is the eminent monk?" He didn't answer the first call. He didn't say anything at the second call. And after the third call, the monk was beaten on the Zen bed. He stood up straight, stretched his waist, opened one eye, jumped up, nodded to Simon King, and responded with a Fenglu voice, "What do you ask me?" A poor monk can't change his name when he's walking, but he can't change his surname when he's sitting down. He is a monk who came from the Hanting Temple in the dense pine forest of the country of Jeonju in the western region. He travels here and gives medicine to help people. Officer, what do you want me to say? Simon King said, "Since you give medicine to help people, I ask for some nourishing medicine. Do you have it?" Monk who said, I have it. Then he said, "I'm inviting you home now. Will you go?" Monk who said, I'll go. Simon King said, "Just go ahead and that's it." Monk who stood up straight, took his iron stick from the bedside and leaned on it. He carried his leather bag on his back, which contained medicine gourds, went down to the meditation hall and walked out. Simon King told Diane, "Bell to donkeys, go home with the master and wait. I will come." Monk who said, "Officials don't have to do this. You just go ahead when riding. Poor monks don't ride on top either. Guan King arrives before you." Simon King said, "He must be an eminent monk with means, otherwise, how could he speak so loudly?" Afraid that he was gone, he told Diane, "At least follow him." So the elder who made the speech got on his horse, followed by his servants, and went straight into the city to come home. That day, April 17th, was not only Wang Liuer's birthday, but also Li Zhao's birthday at home. And there were guests having a drink. In the afternoon, there was no one at Wang Liuer's house, so he sent his brother Wang Jing to invite Simon King. He was ordered to look for Diana at the door of his house to talk to him, but he didn't see Diane at the door. He just stood there. After making an appointment for an hour, just as Yunyang and Li Jiar were sending Motherly out to the courtyard to get on the sedan, She saw a boy of 15 or 16 years old wearing a bun and asked where he was from. The young boy walked up to Yunnyang without knowing it, kowtowed to Yunnyang, and said, I am from the Han family, and I am looking for brother and to talk to. Yunnyang asked, what about brother N? Ping'an was beside him. I was afraid that he knew it was Wang Lior. I was afraid that he might have said something wrong, so she pulled him aside and said to Yunnyang, he is brother Han. An envoy from the family came to look for Diana and asked Han when he would come, coaxed by this. Yunnyang said nothing and went back to the back. Soon Diane and Hussein arrived at the door first. Their legs were sore from walking and they were covered in sweat. They were complaining. Mengku had a calm appearance and was not out of breath. Ping'an sent Wang Jing to Wang Lior to invite his father and talk to him for a while. He said it to Diana again and said, I don't want my aunt to see it. I picked it up for him a long time ago. Otherwise, the trap will be exposed. Here you go. If I ask my mother again later, you will also say the same thing. Dan walked away with his eyes open, only looking at the fan. What's wrong with my bad fortune today? Father Pingbai asked me to bring this thief-bald prisoner. It's such a short way. Go straight from the temple outside the door to your home. There was no rest on the road, and I was out of breath as I walked. My father hired a donkey to ride with him, but he didn't ride on it. He just walked on without any trouble, and it was hard for my legs. The soles of my shoes were worn out. It's wet, and his feet are broken. It's a living business, Ping'an said. Why did Dad invite him to our house? Diane said. Who knows? He asked him what kind of medicine he asked for. Just as he was talking, he heard the sound of shouting. When Simon King arrived home, he saw Mengku at the door and said, my master is truly a god among men. As expected, he arrived first. Let's sit down in the hall inside. Simon King asked the bookboy to take the clothes, change his hat, and sit with him. After having tea, Mengku opened his eyes and saw that the hall was high and far away, with a deep character UN. On the door was a turtleback pattern shrimp beard woven green bead curtain, and the ground was covered with a lion rolling hydrangea plush thread blanket. In the middle is a table with dragonfly legs, a mantis belly, and soap-colored ripples. On the table is a Zumizuo marble screen with a tapestry ring. All around are loach heads and Nanmu targets with swollen muscles leaning against each other. The paintings hanging on the two walls are all purple bamboo poles with silk edges and agate axes. Exactly. The painted drums made of leather are used to vibrate the courtyard, and the ebony spring platforms are used to hold wine. After Mengku finished watching, Simon King asked, does my master need wine? Mengku said, the poor monk goes out with wine and meat. Simon King ordered the boy, don't look at the vegetarian food later, bring wine and rice. It was Li Zhao's birthday at that time, and there were all kinds of food and rice in the kitchen. Place the table and just bring it up. First, there were 4 plates of fruits, 4 plates of side dishes, and 4 plates of wine, 1 plate of fish, 1 plate of marinated duck, 1 plate of black-skinned chicken, and 1 plate of dancing perch. He also brought 4 things to go with the meal: a plate of walnut meat stir-fried with scallops and green onions, a plate of finely chopped meat, a plate of fat lamb intestines, and a plate of smooth meat. The slippery loge. The next time I brought out another soup and rice dish, 2 meatballs in a bowl, sandwiching a strip of sausage roll meat, called Yelongzir's soup, a large plate of cracked head-high meat buns. Simon King let Hu Monk eat, and taught the piano boy to take the round-shaped hook-head chicken neck pot. Open the refined red clay head from Yao Zhou, pour out the yin-nourishing white wine one by one, and pour it into the hanging lotus pod, inside the foot clock. Hand it to Mengku. Mengku put it into his mouth, sucked it in and drank it. Then 2 more items were added, a plate of thickly chopped horse intestines, and a plate of pickled goose necks. There were 2 more beautiful things to drink with Mengku, a plate of skinny grapes and a plate of flowing red plums. Behind him was another large bowl of eel noodles and vegetable rolls, which he brought out together to scatter with Mengku. Immediately, Mengku was stunned by the food and said, this poor monk is drunk and well-fed. That's enough. Simon King asked his left and right to take the wine table because he asked him for the medicine for the room technique. Mengku said, I have a medicine. which was made by the old gentleman and passed down by the Queen Mother. It is destined to be given only by people. Since the officials treat me favorably, I will give you a few pills. So he took out the gourd from the bag, poured out 100 pills, and ordered, 1 pill at a time, no more, and serve it with shaku. Then he squeezed the gourd, took 2 cents and a piece of pink paste, and said, "You can only use 2 cents at a time, not more. If you feel swollen, pinch it with your hands, and just beat it on both legs. It makes sense. You can use it sparingly, but don't let it out to others." Simon King took it with both hands and said, "Let me ask you, what is the effect of this medicine?" Menghu said, "The shape is like a chicken egg and the color is like goose yellow." After Laojin practiced the art 3 times, Queen Mother passed on the recipe. From the outside it looks as light as dung, but from the inside it looks as precious as Wang Jin Lang. How can it be exchanged for gold? How can it be compared with jade? Let your waist be golden and your clothes purple. Let your building be tall. Let your light fur be fat. Let you be a talented pillar. This medicine can be placed in the palm of your hand, and you will float into the bridal chamber. The spring in the cave never grows old. The scenery outside is always fragrant. The jade mountain is not decayed, and the Danshan is full of light at night. You feel refreshed after one battle, and strong in energy and blood after another battle. No matter how charming and pampered she is, with 12 beauties and red makeup, she will obey me and be as hard as a gun all night long. Taking it for a long time can widen the spleen and stomach, nourish the kidneys, and support yang. The beard will turn black for 100 days, and the body will be strong for 1,000 dynasties. Solid teeth can improve eyesight, and Young Sheng female queen only hides it. If you don't believe me, mix the rice with the cat and taste it. For 3 days there will be no excess, and for 4 days the heat will be unbearable. The white cat will turn black and stop urinating and feces. It will lie down in the wind during the summer months and hide in the water in winter. If you still don't release it, all your hair will fall off. Take 1.5 cents each time to make Yangsheng stronger and stronger. If you rest 10 women in one night, their essence will never be damaged. The old woman frowned, saying she couldn't be a prostitute. Sometimes my heart is tired and I withdraw my troops from the battlefield. Take a sip of cold water, and the young will return to essence without being hurt. Happy night, full of spring scenery. Give it as a gift to a close friend, and it will always be a safe haven. After Simon King heard this, he wanted to ask him for a prescription, saying, "When you ask for a doctor, you must ask for a good doctor. And when you give medicine, you must pass on the prescription. My master does not teach me the prescription. If I don't use it after a long time, where can I find the master? No matter how much the master wants, the master and I will do it." Yin ordered Dian, "Get 20 taels of platinum from behind quickly." He handed it to Menghu and asked him for this prescription. The Hu monk smiled and said, "The poor monk is a monk who travels all over the world. What is the use of this wealth? The officials will take it back as soon as possible." He was about to get up, when Simon King saw that he refused to teach him the recipe. He said, "Master, you don't need money. I have a piece of cloth 5 feet long. Let's make some clothes with master immediately." He took it from left and right, and handed it to Menghu with both hands. Menghu just asked and thanked him. Before going out, he ordered, "Don't use it too much. Be careful. Be careful." After saying this, he put his robe on his back, tied his crutches, and walked away. Exactly, the pole supports the sun and the moon, and the mango shoes travel across Jujinju.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.